Have you seen the new Y2K Taco Bell menu?
No, I haven't.
Dude,
Living in New York City is like hurting my fast food consumption.
Dude,
so much fast food.
crazy, super hot fire menu options in Taco Bell right now. You gotta check it out. Yeah, the Y2K menu. You're not ready. You're not ready.
Let me pull up this website.
Cool Ranch Dorito, nachos, apple pie, crazy super hot fire.
There's gotta be a DoorDash like promo for this, right? Like, you think I can get 15%? All right, today we're gonna be talking about third parties and whether or not progressives should start a third party.
That's the episode. That's it. We really wanted to put one out, and I think that this has been
talked about this before.
No, we haven't. And this is something that I've been chewing on actually for a long time. I don't know what you think about this.
I don't really know what I think about this either.
I have a guess as to what you think about, but this should be a little bit of a shorter episode because I don't think we're gonna, we're not gonna do our weave, of all the different topics and things and put them together. I don't know if you got that Trump reference.
We aren't masters like Mr. DJT.
No.
I haven't weave yet.
No, not yet. So we're just gonna stick and focus on one issue, which is third parties, and specifically, I think, progressive third parties. I think the thing that is inflicting this idea into my mind is that there is like a lot of unity in the Republican Party right now, just in terms of like the way that they are really lockstep in like enacting Trump's agenda in a way that like Democrats don't have and didn't have under Biden. And I think that after a disastrous 2024 election, there are like two completely different ideas for where to take the Democratic Party. And I think one of them is a great idea, and I think one of them sucks. And so the problem is that it's not as though both camps within the party have power to shape that. It's really more one of them. Yeah. And so I guess, do you want to take over and maybe lay some of this groundwork for us?
Well, I think it's interesting, actually, that you say that the Republican Party is really in lockstep. Because the Republicans would disagree with you. Like, one of their main things after, like, the Charlie Kirk assassination was like, hey, guys, like, let's put aside our differences. Like, let's, we have a common enemy. The left. And because there's been all this like shit about like the Groyper wars and beyond like the kind of online discourse where there's always like real debate, there's like real factions between like some of like the remaining kind of like more, I guess, more traditional conservatives and the MTGs and the Beaubears and the libertarians, like the kind of the Rand Pauls and the is it Rand or Ron? Which one is the one right now? Rand. The Rand Pauls and or like you folks like Thomas Massey. There was the whole kind of discourse going on about like internal debate in MAGA over like the Epstein files. Yeah. Like they have serious differences, but they're able to like act and behave as one party. And that's the bar that you need to clear. Can you come together and get your entire party together to support like a piece of legislation? Because everything is done right now through like the reconciliation process and through these big mega bills, because it's the only things that can get through Congress. So that's the bar. But that's kind of a pragmatic approach to it. I think there's also like a far more ideological and like even moral approach to this question, which is like do progressives want to be a part of this party?
Do you want to finish that?
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't think progressives want to be a part of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party sucks right now.
Yeah.
Um, I'm pulling up the approval rating because I want to get it exactly right. Minus 32, a 3 decade low for the approval rating of the Democratic
Good
Party.
God.
That's not good.
God.
And to be honest with you,
Insane.
the Republican Party is not like a lot better. Like it's better than that. Um, but that's not saying a lot, you
No.
know? And I think the problem, one thing that you and I have talked a lot about, which I think could be useful in this episode, is the ways in which someone who's associated with the Democratic Party has a cap to how liberal they can be. But
Yeah.
someone who isn't in the Democratic Party can kind of be as liberal as they want. Or someone who
Yeah.
like isn't tied to the elites. Like here's the thing that spawns this whole conversation for me, which is that I just think like the Democratic brand is like a little bit of a ball and chain right now.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I actually don't think that it's that helpful for candidates. I think in fact it's probably not helping them, and I
No,
don't
it's
think it's
definitely dragging you down.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
when I think about when I think about the up and comers in the Democratic Party, I'm not thinking about Pete Buttigieg. I'm sorry, I'm
No.
not. I'm
No.
sorry. I'm sorry, white
No.
moms across suburbia. I apologize. I think about like Graham Plattner and Zoran
Yeah,
Mamdani.
yeah, yeah.
I think about these people who are actually pretty broadly popular. If you don't believe me, Zoran Mamdani has the second highest, is polling number 2 among Republican voters, behind only the Republican candidate himself. So he's polling he's polling ahead of Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo in New York among
That's
Republican
crazy.
voters.
What
It is crazy.
is that the Siena Times poll that recently came out?
It is, and I think the reason for that is I don't think most people look at a guy like Zoran Mamdani and they're like, that's an elite Democrat. Like no one thinks that. He's
No.
so far removed from the party establishment that it's almost like he's not part of the party. So
Yeah.
then the question you ask yourself is like, okay, why is he running as a Democrat? Why does anyone run as a Democrat? And the answer is because we live in like a two-party state.
Yeah.
I think I want you to talk about this with the Ross Duto stuff, but my take here is like we live in a two-party state and it is so difficult to set up a third party that
Yeah.
the two parties that exist are the easiest way to like gain a platform for your beliefs. And
Well,
so
that's exactly it.
yeah,
Like,
so take it away.
well, no, I mean, yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, I think that for when you talk about people like Zoran Mamdani and Graham Plattner, who in like in like a parliamentary system, like in Europe, for example, would not be a part of the same party as like Chuck Schumer,
No.
or Alyssa Slotkin. They wouldn't be, or people, whatever. Take your pick. I think that I think the question is, for if you're an individual candidate like Zoran or Plattner, I think the question is it more beneficial for me to run in the Democratic primary and to run as a Democrat,
Right.
or to skip that and run as an independent? Because I think that the reason why it would be kind of difficult to start a third party is, if, like, let's say that Graham Plattner ran as an independent and the Democrats nevertheless decided to run Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, in the Maine Senate race. You would totally split the vote. Like, you could totally imagine a situation there where Susan Collins gets 45% of the vote, and Plattner and Mills split the rest or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the Democratic primary, you are kind of like, you're adding another barrier to getting elected, but if you win the primary and if you cross that first barrier, you're greatly increasing your chances because it means that you're not going to have a split vote. Um, Although Zoran
Unless
would
Andrew Cuomo
propose,
runs as a independent, of course.
I think that's like theoretically, but of course the pretty easy counter argument to that is that the Democratic centrists would just run like against you as independents. So kind of no
But
matter what.
The New York example of that is actually sort of proof. Perhaps maybe Cuomo is just a particularly terrible candidate, which he actually might be.
Yeah,
But he's not doing well, and
no,
I don't think that people are like. I don't think that the average voter in New York is like, man, you want to know what? Like, I'm really impressed by the way that Andrew Cuomo has taken this loss so well that he's decided to stick it to the Democratic voters and run again.
yeah,
Like, I don't think anyone's like, man, that's leadership, you
yeah.
know? And he's only polling worse than he ever has since he started running as a Democrat. Um,
I mean, it's also the case that the only reason why Cuomo is able to do this is because New York City is such a democratic place. Like if you're in any other part of the country that's like more 50-50 split or closer to 50-50 split between Democrats and Republicans, you run you run a third candidate and you're probably going to split. You're probably going to lose for like the person closer to you ideologically, unless you actually perfectly pull voters from each side, which is like
right.
really, really rare.
And the other thing that I think is key to mention is that in some states that won't matter because in some states you need 50% of the vote to win, and so
Yeah,
there'd be runoffs. And in that case, it's kind of okay if there's an independent because that
true.
independent would just have to get more votes than the Democrat or the Republican.
Yeah,
But in most states in the country, it's just majority, or
yeah,
it's just like the biggest chunk.
yeah,
Um,
plurality.
yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember the word. Um, yeah, I
Well, I
mean
think
we
what this whole conversation says, is that your calculus about whether or not you're going to start a third party, needs to account for like a particular state's like electoral structure. You know, like
yeah
it needs to kind of you need to yeah, you need to take into account whether there's a runoff or whether it's first past the post or whether it's ranked choice or anything like that. Because otherwise, you're probably going to split the vote, or you need to get the Democratic Party behind your independent candidacy and have them not run a candidate,
right.
which is what Dan Osborne did in Nebraska. But that only works for like deep red seats, so it's very kind of like place dependent.
It's very place dependent, and I also think it's face dependent.
Yeah,
In that, if you and I start the epic progressive party,
yeah,
we're not gonna get too many votes, I don't think. But I have sort of been hoping for some years now that a big progressive face, AOC, would start a new goddamn party.
mhm,
And I think that there's a lot of smart arguments that say, hey, like, actually, this is a really dangerous idea. However, I think we're in this sort of unprecedented moment where the Democratic Party and the Democratic brand is so in the trash can that you could actually get a really strong movement um, of sort of shifting a lot of the voters from the Democrats to a new party. Part of what makes me think this is that this Gallup poll just came out, which showed that for the first time in history, a majority of Democrats have positive opinions about socialism. To me, most Democratic voters are moving to the left. And beyond that, I actually think if you start a new party, what you're doing is shedding yourself of the ball and chain of the Democratic Party. What is that ball and chain? Elitism, hoity toity, annoying rich people, right? Which is so distasteful to
yeah,
Republicans and especially Trump's base.
yeah,
However, there's like a lot of areas in which I think the far left and what is currently described as the far right actually agree. And I think that a theoretical new party, would fail if it only took half of the Democratic voters.
Yeah.
But if you get half more of the Democratic voters and then a sizable chunk of, like, say, the MAGA base, or like other people, or a lot of independents, which there are a lot of in the country, like, I think that you have an argument to make. The reason that this is coming up for me is, like, you know, uh, Israel Palestine, the Gaza issue, is an issue in which you see people on the left and people, surprisingly, on the right, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, sort of all agreeing about a genocide taking place in Gaza, right?
Yeah.
You sort of have this agreement of, like, populism, sort of this agreement, like the Graham Plattner and the Donald Trump, the same style of the way of talking.
Well, not Donald Trump on Gaza.
No, I'm talking about populism, economic
Oh,
populism. I'm saying, like, Donald Trump and Graham Plattner and Bernie Sanders and Zoran Mamdani all subscribe to the same there are people who are the reason for your economic problems. Trump says it's brown people, and the other three dudes who I mentioned say it's, like, actually the elites. And so like I just said, like, Zoran Mamdani is polling number 2 among Republican voters in New York. Yeah. Number 2.
I think that there's definitely space for, like, a progressive kind of economically populist party to take some voters away from the Republican Party, and on top of obviously taking voters away from the Democratic Party. But we can't overstate how many that would be, and that would also require some, like, kind of level of moderation on issues like immigration. You look at Dan Osborne or Graham Plattner or, like, Nathan Sage in Iowa. Some of these, like, kind of economically populist candidates who kind of we can imagine would be, like, the model for a third party. Excluding Zoran, because Zoran is in New York City, in, like, kind of more competitive places. And their messaging on immigration is, like, very kind of moderate. It's very, like, strong border, but pathway to citizenship, no cruelty, but, immigrant workers compete with us on wages, and we need to, like, take immigration seriously. Like, if that's the type of candidate you're going to be, you need to kind of take some. You're not just, like, you can't just be a progressive. Like, you can't just be on the left of the Democratic Party, and to win Republican voters, you need to be something new. The point of a third party is that you need to, like, actually be something new.
I agree. I think that's right. I guess I don't personally feel that Graham Plattner's take on immigration is moderate. Because to me, a moderate take on immigration... What's up?
I'm going to look him up. Maybe that's okay.
Because to me, like, the way that I understand Graham Plattner's take on immigration is, like, we need strong borders, but also, like, the normal way in which our immigration system works has been broken for, like, decades.
Yeah.
And so, like, what I think that ends up leading to is, like, a significantly larger amount of immigrants, coming into this country legally. Like, I actually don't see it as, like, a moderate immigration take, because to me, a moderate immigration take is like Obama, where it's like, well, we're not gonna we won't separate families, we keep them in cages together. And it's like, bro, like, that's not
here
progressive.
The headline for his platform plank for this is "Stop the Mass Deportation Machine, pass real immigration reform." So, like, that's literally the two taglines from each side: the mass deportation machine and, we need comprehensive immigration reform.
Right, but I think from what I understand, comprehensive immigration reform doesn't mean, like, stop people from coming into the country.
It means pathway to citizenship and more legal immigration. But it also means far less, like, he's pairing that with, like, far less far less illegal immigrants.
I think that's right, but I think in his mind, like there wouldn't even need to be illegal immigrants if the pathways to legal immigration were easier. I don't know. I think you're right that it's a different thing. Like it's not. We don't talk about immigration like that in the Democratic and Republican parties for some reason.
No.
Like I don't understand why Democrats seated the issue of immigration in this way, but when Trump is like, fucking split these families apart, rather than like, hey, actually, like maybe let's just fix immigration, they're like, no, let's keep them together, but they're still in cages. And I just, yeah.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
Anyways, no, it's good. So I think your point actually is really correct that like this party is going to have to come up with new ideas. But I think the ideas that, to me, which are like pretty firmly this party will have to stand by, because I think these values are what encapsulates the like populace that is really frustrated with the two-party system right now. To me, the first two issues that come to mind are Israel, Palestine, and economic populism. Like to me, those are the two. Like a successful progressive third party has to have those two.
Absolutely.
Has to have those two issues.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, but I guess I think that there are really important moral considerations to be made here. I would be extremely susceptible to the argument that we like need a third party as progressives because we cannot be in the same party as people who support the genocide in Israel. And I think that, yeah, like if that issue is going to be like your red line, if that's going to be your line in the sand, and you like can't be associated, like in, you know, you can't be in the same political party as people who have that opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think that you can make a pretty strong like moral case for that. I also think, but I think if you're there's also pragmatic considerations and like electoral considerations to be had here, because what you also don't want, and this is not going to help like your moral cause at all, is if you just leave the Democratic Party to become politically homeless and kind of powerless, you know, like
the Democrats are homeless and powerless, and you get like Republican majority for 12 years.
Yeah, or even like you know, you can't just like there's nothing there's nothing cause advancing about just like shooting yourself in the foot. You need, in order for like the kind of like moral take to actually like kind of have legs, there needs to be some type of like pragmatic consideration that goes along with it that allows you to like actually make good on what you're trying to do and actually like do something with the values that you're trying to like, you know, that you care about and that you're articulating. So there needs to be some like, I guess what I'm there needs to be some type of persuasive argument that this is a better way to win power and a better way to leverage power than trying to like win the internal battle in the Democratic Party and trying to like win reins of that institution.
I think that the argument that I have for that, well, firstly, let me say that I think for a movement like this to be possible, it has to be a utterly carefully coordinated effort by the biggest leaders of the progressive. Like I'm saying like AOC, Bernie, Zoran, and maybe like one slightly more conservative, like maybe like an Elizabeth Warren type, all at the same time. For this to work, would have to be like, we're starting a new party. Every single one of them at the same time. If, like, without that, I mean, like, there's no way it works. But without that, pushing that aside. What's up?
Too much leftism.
I agree. I mean, you'd have to get, maybe you get like a Josh Hawley crazy take.
You'd need to get weird with it, is what you would need to do.
You need to get weird. You'd maybe need like a Josh Hawley, you know, maybe a Thomas Massey. I'm not sure. But
you would need like a Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. You would need like you would need to be able to get like centrist populists as well.
I'm not.
Like you would need like a kind of different like you would need to articulate some type of like different ends and like different goal of politics, and you and like get kind of like funky with it policy wise.
I guess I'm just not sure I agree with that. Maybe New York is just like maybe just New York Republicans are super liberal, but to me, like Zohran Mamdani is a democratic socialist.
Yeah.
And again, just to like I've said it, this is my third time saying it. Polling number 2 among Republican voters. Like to me, that shows that like this kind of leftist populism actually has some sway among like Republican voters.
Yeah.
I just think it's possible. That which means maybe you can do it without a centrist populist. Obviously, it'll be a lot easier.
And there was always a lot of Bernie Trump overlap in 2016 and 2020.
Exactly.
I mean, in 2016, I think the figure was 10% of Bernie voters went to Trump or something like that.
I think it was like 8 to 10.
Yeah. Which is like
for the record, by the way, a lower percentage than Hillary to McCain voters. Hillary to McCain was like 14 or 15.
It's even higher. I think it was like 20 or 20. It was like a crazy high.
It's not really bad. Sorry, that's just my own here's Hillary Clinton hatred take.
Yeah, no, we have to just like sprinkle that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's what I'm
let her forget.
Here's what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. I think that if you're gonna like start a new party and try to be like kind of instantly, and you're trying to compete with both parties, you're trying to win like a 3-way race, you need to get ideologically funky with that shit. I think that if you're gonna start a new party and you're like, fuck it, like let's just sacrifice the next election, and your goal is to like do what like Reform UK is doing, where you actually just beat your closest ideological party like out of existence. If your goal is to be like, we're starting a new party and we're gonna take all the voters from the Democrats, and some of those Democrats are gonna go to Republicans, and some of the Republicans are gonna come to us, and we're gonna be the next party in the 2-party system. I think that that's like a different there's a different calculus there, you know, and those are like two kind of different approaches to having a third party. Because in history, that's how the third parties have gone, where you don't
they sacrifice the first election and then the second one they come back.
Yeah, or like we've tend to have like a 2-party system where like a third party comes in and like gobbles up one of the other major parties, pretty much. You know, and there's like a big like kind of ideological, like there's a big political realignment that happens.
And I'm just saying, I think that when Trump is gone, which looks like is going to happen in 2028, he claims he's not going to run for a third term, right? I mean, if he passes the baton to JD Vance, like that is the moment, in my opinion. Like
to win a 3-way race.
Yeah, because I think there is opportunity for a great realignment. Because look, Trump's got the sauce. He's just got it.
He's got the sauce.
He's got the sauce, and Vance doesn't have it. And you know, if it's like Vance versus like fucking Pete Buttigieg, then they're gonna be like, all right, well, Vance doesn't have the Trump sauce, but whatever. But if you get like a saucy, like Mamdani-esque guy on the other side, maybe they're gonna be like, that guy sounds more like Trump than Buttigieg does. Or than Vance does. I don't know. These are just my takes. I also think that the like Peter Thiel style technocratic country that Vance is searching for and will obviously be a champion of actually isn't popular among Trump's base.
But you know how I feel about Vance. That dude, my Vance hot take is that dude has the he has it. That dude is not to be messed with.
I don't think he's to be messed with, which is why I don't think you run Pete Buttigieg.
Look, he has it. Because I worry that like like an economically populist third party, like what we're envisioning, wouldn't work against Vance. Because I don't know if you necessarily beat Vance for like the kind of like populist swing vote. Like I don't know if
Vance is the VP for the last 4 years, which oversees like the economic collapse of America and the hollowing out of the middle class and like the rising of grocery prices, like I think you actually have an opportunity.
I think that's a very good point. I mean, I guess look, a lot of it depends on what happens like the next
2024 Vance. I think you're right.
Yeah.
2028 Vance, if the graph keeps going the way it does in terms of the economy and the
if people remain really unhappy with the economy, then like among low information voters and kind of among like I mean,
which is most voters, to be clear.
It's really like it's kind of like the I mean, as we've talked about many times off air, the real swing voters of today are the lower information voters, the kind of like who are more economically populist but kind of checked out. And Trump did extremely well with them in 2020.
I actually think it's moderate Republicans, Charlie.
Oh yeah,
I think those are the swing voters. I think there's a lot of Republicans that are just so sick and tired of Trump's actions.
I think there's a lot of center-right Americans with a conscience. There's a lot.
Oh my god, we have to take back our democracy. In
fact, there's enough to swing an election. Enough Mitt Romney people out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that I think in 2024, among like the kind of lower information voters, lower income voters, who are kind of checked out politically, but who have like kind of economically populist beliefs, who won Trump the election. Yeah. I think Vance wins those voters too. But does he win those voters against like a Bernie? Like, I don't know.
Maybe not. That's what I'm trying to say. He absolutely wins those voters if Kamala Harris fucking wins the nomination.
He wins those voters against a Kamala.
Or if Gavin Newsom does, because as hard as Gavin Newsom makes people live out, all right, he's like an establishment Democrat. He's not going to change the system we're in. Okay, here's one thing that I wanted to focus on before we end, which is like I think the reason that I'm really thinking about this third party thing right now is maybe less that I see that like the opening for a third party is here, and more that the opportunity to change the Democratic Party is just wavering. Like I'm just watching what's happening. Like it is to anyone with a brain. Like to anyone with a brain and who is like really genuinely being realistic and honest and objective. It is clear that like this classic like neoliberal Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Apac Shakur style Democratic Party is dead in the water. Dead, bleeding, upside down, maimed by a tiger shark. And it is clear that this sort of Mamdani style, Graham Plattner style Democratic brand is quite popular.
Yeah.
And
there's momentum.
There's clear momentum for it. I'm not seeing that momentum allowed. Like it is momentum that could lead to a genuine political movement. And they're digging their heels in, man. And by they, to be very clear, like it is like the Obamas, the Clintons, the Jeffries, and the Schumers of the world. I think you can make an argument that like, hey, wait, like look, like Kathy Hochul just endorsed Zohran Mamdani. Maybe, but then also someone after that happened accused her of being a communist, and then her Twitter response to that, rather than being like, that's a ridiculous thing to say, was actually, no, Ms. Hochul is a staunch capitalist. Like, okay, like, great. You could say, hey, Senator Chris Van Hollen just said he doesn't understand why leaders of the Democratic Party haven't endorsed Mamdani yet. Clearly, he's tapping into something important. But the like sort of classic faces of the Democrats, Buttigieg, Cory Booker, I guess, Amy Klobuchar, Jeffries, Schumer, like these people are digging their heels in. I think it's clear they're digging their heels in. And that concerns me because at the end of the day, they are the power brokers of the party.
Yeah, I mean, party leadership is definitely digging their heels in. I think that like the Klobuchars and the Bookers of the world, like just kind of like middle of the Democratic Party Democrats, are persuadable. I think that they're just gonna follow. They're gonna like follow the political winds. You know. I think the question is, do the party leaders, are they persuadable? And if not, are you able to beat them? And are you able to take control of the party within the party
Yeah.
apparatus? Like, are you just able to defeat their endorsed candidates? Are you able to fight back against their very deep pockets? Or do you require a third party? And then the question is, with the third party, does that provide you distancing yourself from the Democrats? Does that provide you with enough of a benefit to make up for the kind of, to make up for the lack of like a D next to your name in the ballot, or to make up for the lack of, party institutions, or like, the kind of, like all of the kind of people that the Democrats have working for them if you win the primary,
Yeah.
does it make up for, I don't know, does it make up for kind of like the institutional factors that keep the Democratic Party alive as an institution and that make people who otherwise wouldn't be a Democrat run in the Democratic Party? I
Yeah.
think that that's like, because like even if you run outside of a Democratic primary, you still need to face the same like headwinds as far as like outside spending goes against you. You know, like you still need to deal with APAC money. You still need to deal
Well,
with like Chuck Schumer's like Senate Democratic DSCC. You still need to deal with all like the big donors lining up against the Democratic candidate.
it's true.
You just now also have made it a three-way race, and
Yeah.
like I don't know, like does that just make it more challenging for you? Or
Yeah.
does it like force the Democrats to kind of like back off a little bit because they don't want to risk
Right.
splitting the three-way race, and they recognize you as more popular? Like, I think there's a lot of different ways that this thing can go.
I think another way it could go is merely the threat of the creation of a third party.
Yeah.
I think that, as much like crap people give Bernie for being like not a team player or whatever, like he for like 40 years has been trying his best through the Democratic Party to, sway without being like I'm going to start a third party or
Well,
however you
he's
want
an
to.
independent.
It's true, but he endorsed Clinton, he endorsed Biden.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of opportunities to be like, hey, the Democrats suck, and he hasn't. And I think it was his hope that he'd be able to change the party through the party. And on the one hand, you could say, well, maybe it worked because his kind of style of politics, which wasn't acceptable 12 years ago, is
Is
acceptable
now
now.
acceptable. Yeah.
But you could also say it didn't work because Nancy Pelosi steps down for the first time in a bajillion years, and we get Hakeem Jeffries.
Uh,
Uh, and so I think whether or not you are going to start a third party or not as AOC, I think you have to at least say you're going to. Like,
yeah.
like in the same way that Musk does it. Like Musk threatens a third party, and then Republicans back off him. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you notice how like Trump was really attacking Musk, and then when he was
Yeah.
like, "I'm going to create a freedom party," all of a sudden Trump was like, "Oh." I just think it's
Yeah.
something to take note of.
It's true. I mean, it's true. There's I mean, I think the Bernie argument and the Bernie piece of this might honestly be a good argument for fighting within the Democratic Party, though, because he really has pushed the party in an economically populist direction. It's not like
But
he's
he hasn't
won.
pushed the establishment. He's pushed the voters.
He's
the
pushed
vo-
the establishment. He hasn't. I mean, again, it's like it's not far enough. He hasn't won, but like, the establishment like will echo some of like his rhetoric in a way that they never ever 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 would have in years past.
It's true.
Um,
But I don't think they're doing it because of him. I think they're doing it because of Trump.
yeah, interesting.
I
Like,
think like yeah, I think Democrat establishment tends to be more responsive to like and more reflective of like what the right is doing well rather than like what the people to the left of them are doing well.
yeah,
Um, one thing I was just gonna say though is like is you're right. Like he has pushed the party. Like Joe Biden, for example, ran and sorry campaigned and ran the country in a much more progressive
yeah,
vision than he would have if he were elected 8 years earlier. Significantly more, and
yeah.
even more than he campaigned on. To be honest with
I
you, in
mean,
2020,
think about the scope of like the American Rescue Plan, like the
it's
post-COVID
true.
bill, versus like the economic stimulus in response to 2008 from Obama, or
It's
the scope
absolutely
of
right.
like the Inflation Reduction Acts, like climate change credits. Rest in peace. May they rest in peace.
May
You know,
they.
compared to like any kind of big spending policy that was done in the
Absolutely
previous.
correct. It's true. I think that you bring up a good point, like with Biden and with all and with the different ways in which the American Rescue Plan is different from like how Obama would have run things in the way that like Bernie probably actually has had a pretty strong effect. I guess I see this moment as an opportunity for something just a little bit stronger, just
Yeah,
because of like kind of how deep in the trash can the U.S. is, and how deep in the trash can the Democratic Party is, and the Republican Party for that matter. Like more people are identifying as independents as they ever have.
yeah,
Um, and so I guess I just see this as a moment for a little bit more. I think one thing to look out for before we end in a second, just parting messages. One thing to look out for is what the Democrats do on campaign finance reform. This is
hmm,
something that they're talking a lot about right now. Um, I think they almost were like, "Hey, no more big corporate money," and then they like got rid of David Hogg out at DNC. Incredible fucking tweet, by the way. Um, uh,
yeah.
and then
Seriously,
they sort
rest in
of,
peace, David Hogg. That dude
I
slept.
know. Um, but if you, not you, Charlie, but if one can get the Democratic establishment to agree to some campaign finance reform, that removes the pressure from APAC. It removes the pressure from
Hmm.
big oil, and renews pressure from where most of your money is coming from now, which is individual voters.
Yeah,
Clearly, by the way, which works because Zoran Mamdani is out out financing every single person running against him all together combined, like times two or something. And he's basically only getting donations from the public.
yeah,
So I just think that's something interesting to think about. I think that you are right that like it's probably not feasible to run a third party on the progressive side, like while the Democratic Party still exists. I
yeah,
think either you have to do what Reform is doing, which is like literally become so unstoppable that you subsume and obliterate the Democratic Party,
yeah,
or what we were just talking about, which is like change it radically from the inside. And I think for
yeah.
that, something like AOC primarying Chuck Schumer and beating him, or a super progressive winning the 2028 nomination, something like that's required.
Well, I think that if you're like kind of an economic populist, and if you're like a Graham Plattner type, if you're a Dan Osborne type, if you're one of these, yeah, an economic populist, and it's like there's a lot of room, ideological room within that umbrella term. But I think running not just as an independent down ballot Senate races, congressional races, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think you can like create like a new party with a name that like everyone and like that I like that has like some like party value. Like you can't do that before 26, obviously, or probably even before 28. But you can lay the groundwork by getting a bunch of independents elected, and running as an independent still allows you to distance yourself from the actual Democratic Party. So I think
And
that
the Republican Party.
and the Republican Party. So I think that third party campaigns, like I think that like a third party movement can begin just with independent campaigns, because both the Democratic and Republican parties are very unpopular. And within both the Democratic and Republican parties, there's a vast ideological coalition. So more independents could at least like get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And Republicans aren't going to leave the Republicans right now because they're all way too far right for any like new party. Like they're too ideologically aligned, but for the Democrats, this is relevant. But
yeah,
I don't think you do that for 2028. Because 2028 is a unique situation. Like, let's say you run an independent candidate or a third party candidate in 2028 as an economic populist, as a progressive, as whatever you want.
And are you talking presidential or
presidential?
Senate?
Presidential.
Okay, presidential.
Yeah. What probably happens is you just split. You get some small amount of like Republican support, but really you split the Democratic Party and you lose 2028. But maybe you get some momentum, but like, that's, who knows. But if you run in the Democratic primary in 2028 as an economic populist and you win, like, you have taken control of the party apparatus. Like, the party, there's such a void of leadership and there's so few voices that like people actually trust, that whoever wins the Democratic primary in 2028 is going to have a huge amount of power, and the party is going to go in their direction. Like, it is a party-making primary in a way that, like, primaries always are, but, like, never, like, not quite to this extent. Like,
yeah,
this
because there's such a void right now in the party.
There's such a leadership void. Like, 2028 is make or break. And I think you try to win that. You don't do a third party for 2028 for the presidential election. You try to win that primary, because if you win that primary, all of a sudden you're kind of in control of the Democratic Party apparatus, and you're going to have a lot of power to remake it in the way that you see fit. Not to say that third party or independent candidacies down ballot are a bad idea, but for the presidential election in 2028, this is a golden opportunity. You can't let this go.
I think that's a great place to end. I think you're right. I'm convinced of that, actually. I think you're right. I think there's a great chance to actually subsume the Democratic Party right now because of the complete lack of leadership.
Yeah.
Well, except obviously for the diehard Chuck Schumer fans, those are plentiful.
Yeah.
And don't even get me started about
there's so many of them.
The Hakeem Jeffries Glazers, the Jeffries fan club.
Oh my god! Can you imagine? Like, I wonder what those people are like. Who are they?
Do they exist?
Some of them, right? Like, there has to be someone out there who's like, I really fuck with Hakeem Jeffries.
God, they're just maybe after his Hamilton speech on the House floor, people were like, God, what a man.
Wait, was that recent?
Yeah, like it was like a 16-hour speech on the House floor or something. He did it like a week after Cory Booker did his. He was like, all right, like, time to do nothing. Like,
bro.
It's so good. He's so terrible. He's so terrible.
Hamilton has done irreparable damage to the American
everything.
The American center left might never recover from Hamilton.
Nope. All right, Charlie, thank you for joining.
All right.
Thank you, myself, for joining.
Thank you.
This is a good episode. Give us a like and a subscribe and some comments wherever you listen. You can find us at Yeah For Real Pod on all of the places.
Yeah.
Not Twitter or Blue Sky.
Check
out all the other places. Check out our
Substacks.
And that's all I
got. If you're a big fan of the show, just go enjoy a little Baja Blast in between this episode and the next one.